How can we kick it off?
So I would probably because there was this one thing that I was thinking about. I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to this. I'm good, man. I was listening to one of these like just these short clips that people post on like Steve Jobs and like these like these
Inspirational stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
not really inspirational, but more like these kind of like visionary things, different ways of thinking. And then he said this one line that really kind of got me, and he was like he said something like life becomes very simple when you realize this one fact, which is that everything that you call life was built by people no smarter than you and me. So that's something that really kind of rung in my head for a while. Um, so yeah, that would be something that I could bring up because I feel kind of strongly about that nowadays.
Bro,
Is there
honestly,
something similar
honestly,
that
honestly, we
sorry?
could just run from that. Like, we could just start it now from that. Like, I could just clip this up and use that to start.
Nah, let's have a proper intro.
We can have a proper intro, yeah. But is there something similar that you guys could bring up in that vein or running on that sort of
I could
thing?
talk about life. I could talk about life.
You could talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like we can all talk about life, lah.
Barry, you got something to say?
Yeah, no, can. No, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, can't think of any like quotes or like any saying specifically, lah, personally. But I mean, we could run off one, I guess. You just
Bro,
know you're all talking about.
Sebum won Olympia for the fifth time the other day, and he posted, if you numb the bad, you numb the good.
T-Bum is on like
Oh
crazy roids,
no.
bro. He's numbing
Numb.
everything out.
What is it?
He said the guy's on crazy roids. He's numbing everything out.
That's true.
He's not. He's natty, dude.
He's not natty.
He's not natty.
I thought Mr. Olympia you have to be nat.
No, they're untested
No.
examples.
Oh, Mr. Olympia is not.
Yeah, remember.
Just here.
Mr. Olympia is as unnatty as it gets.
I think these guys have been unnatural since they were like 10.
Hey, fuck lah. This will all be really good to put in the thing. We should start with this one.
Well, you
So,
clip
so
it up.
you,
I'll
was like
clip
you
this out. I'm
playing.
gonna find a way to put this in the podcast, but we can start
Like,
now.
No, you can clip this as the intro, like
This
before
will
I
be
introduce it,
Yeah,
just like
this will
a
be the
short intro to it.
this is what
But
I
then it
did
wouldn't
for
be in the
episode
Now there's so
18,
much.
the one with like Sahil's waffle.
Yeah, can.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall I
Go
take it
for it,
away?
buddy. Yeah.
All right, boys. Welcome back. This is episode 20. Episode 20, 20. Is
Big
that
two
correct?
zero. It is, it
Yep.
is.
Is that mate? It's episode 19. The last one was episode 18.
Fuck are you on about? Bro,
Just did
No,
episode
I
no,
18.
no. He just
I
uploaded 18,
posted I
bro.
posted 18. We recorded 19. We're on 20.
You just posted 18.
Yeah.
See, now they're gonna know that we do them all. We do two in one sitting.
Clip it out, clip it out. All right.
As if they wouldn't know that with our fucking clothes on.
In the same position as well.
Wait, just change it up. Change it up a
Okay,
bit.
all right. Again, from the top. Stop it. All right, boys.
Oh my
Welcome
God.
back. This is episode 20. We're in the big 20 of the podcast, of the Boys University podcast. Again, it's the four of us. Me, Arun, Bhatia, Bharath. Sahil couldn't make it. Same as the last episode.
Yeah, he's still busy.
Still busy.
Right.
So on this one, we thought we'd talk about something a little bit more spiritual, something a bit more philosophical. And that is, what are the philosophies that you abide by in life? Growing up, are there any sort of quotes, any sort of ideas, ideologies that you've come to adopt and kind of weave into the way that you live life? And something that I thought about, or something that I watched recently, not that recently, it was probably a few weeks ago. That got me thinking about this topic as well, although Bhatia was the one who brought it up, was this clip that I was watching of Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs is, one of my, he is for probably a lot of people, one of my idols, He was doing this interview from, I think it was like 1970s, 1980s. So this was way back in the day. But Apple was already relatively successful, not nearly as successful as it is now. But what he said in that interview was, he said, life becomes very simple once you realize this one fact, and that is that everything that is all around you that you call life was built by people no smarter than you and I. And that was something that really got to me because you you don't really think of the way things are. You kind of just accept them as what is. But the truth in that statement is real, you know. Everything that's all around us, the institutions that we're in, the companies that we work for, the products that we use every day that change our lives, from the MacBook or the Macintosh to, you know, the MRT, the railroad systems in the world. Those were all built by people. And I think in a certain way, you know, we put these people on pedestals. We say, you know, I could never be as successful as any of these people. I could never do the things that they've done because they're just visionaries. They were so much smarter than I could ever be or that I ever could perceive myself. But at the beginning of their careers, they probably thought the same things. They probably thought, you know, the stuff that came before them was was all that there could ever be. And then they created something that changed the world, right? And little bit later in this interview, Steve Jobs said, you know, the amazing thing is that when you build something, you realize that you can push into the walls of life. You know, you can just, you know, prod at it and something else will come out the other side. And you can shape your environment and you can shape the world that you live in just by building something cool, you know? And that's something that I've started to really appreciate over the last few weeks. And I hope I'll take with me for a long time because I think that's a really, really good mindset to have. You know, being a doer and not a talker, right? Just sitting there and saying, if there's a problem that comes my way that I realize is something that affects me, my friends, my family, I could do something probably to solve that problem. So yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about. Is there anything that you guys have in that similar vein? Something that maybe you guys some quote or some ideology that sticks with you guys since you were younger or recently even, that kind of shapes the way that you've been approaching life. Anyone want to take the floor?
So before that, can I ask? Because yeah, you talked about this, right? Would I be like right in saying that's what's sort of pushing you in, you know, the direction of, you know, you creating your app and you putting a lot of resources into that? And I mean, you have said before that ideally that's what you'd like to be doing with your life, and that is where your career wants to go. And would I be right in saying that in some ways has been pushing you in that direction, or more so in that direction?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's accurate because I mean, obviously, you know, we've talked about this. I'm in law school, right? And a big qualm that I have with being in law school is that lawyers, I feel like as a breed, we talk a lot. You know, we talk and talk and talk, and we base our entire lives off of our ability to talk. Very seldom do you find a lawyer who does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very seldom that you'll find a lawyer who really built something that benefits the world at large. Not to say that there aren't any. I mean, the judges that we have in Singapore that built the judicial system that we have that's so robust and so strong, that's something that I really, really, that's something that we take for granted that I've really come to appreciate. You know, reading a lot of these cases, reading a lot of these judgments, I realize how much depth of thought that they have. And so those are a breed of people that I really have a lot of respect for. But to answer your question, yeah, you know, I'd like to be someone who built something, who, you know, creates a product that at the end of the day helps someone in some way. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this app that I'm doing now. And of course, you know, there are plenty of other reasons why I'm doing it. Ideally, I would want to have some sort of autonomy over my life. I would want to have the ability to control my hours, to control, you know, the work that I'm doing, and to also like implement a vision. You know what I mean? That's something that really appeals to me on a very high level. So to answer your question, yes, it is a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. But what about you guys? Barry, Bhatia, you got anything in that same vein? Or Harun?
Well, one of y'all can go.
Bhatia, what about you first?
I like the quote that you mentioned. I think it's very well put. But I also feel like, given what you've just said, it kind of runs the risk of negating the value of just talking, like in my opinion, because like the thing is like what I enjoy in life is like it's a lot less tangible. I think it's always more like intangible things, things you read, things you hear, things you see. And like I know like that's not what Steve Jobs is alluding to, but I guess that's the line in which our conversation was going, in which case like you say that uh, you find an intrinsic value in being able to help the world with like something that you create, something that you've put out in the world that people can use, people can benefit from. But I agree with that. I think it's great. But I also think like there's a lot of value to like intangible things that we can do, or like things that we can like environments we can create and stuff like that, things we can do for people without like having any like tangibles up in place. And I feel like sometimes we negate the value of that as well. And like that's one. And as for what you were saying about like a quote or something that someone said that stuck with you, there's a lot. I don't know, like I don't have a very good memory, but the one I saw like recently, literally like yesterday, was like this quote by like C Bum. He's like this bodybuilder. He like won Olympia, and like it was something along the lines of if you numbed the bad, you numbed the good. So it's just about like kind of like how you deal with like emotions, like negative emotions, and like how like you deal with like processing things through your life. So given my scenario and circumstances right now, that was just a nice thing to read. And I thought that was quite well said for someone who's probably roided out his fucking head. But yeah.
He's numb good. He's numb good for sure.
Bro, his balls are probably so tiny, dude. The amount of roids he's been on, the thread
Yeah.
injections, is crazy.
You people try to have a serious conversation talking about tiny balls.
Okay, lah.
To be fair,
I mean,
that is a serious problem also.
yeah,
It is a
bro.
serious. Fair enough. Tiny
Poor
balls.
guy, man.
Infertility.
No, but Aman, do you not think like in terms of I mean, because you were saying how with regards to the quote about how like people who created such like who have these cool ass inventions and all, at one time they were like just like one of us, they were looking at other people going like, oh my god, I could never be as smart as this other dude who created something, and then you go on and turn out to be uh to do the same thing or to do something even better. But do you not think that I would say okay this is what I think I would say maybe 90% or 95% already have the drive. And instead of looking at these people who've already created such things and be like, oh my God, I can never be them, instead they kind of do the opposite and be like, oh, I'm taking inspiration from them and I want to do something similar or something better. And that is the drive that they have, which, okay, someone like me doesn't have, which is why like we are all just like,
Where we
for
are.
lack of a better term, just mids lah. Like yeah, we're just the average Joe, Like
No,
I mean, at this point in our life is different, but like that's
I,
yeah,
I think
go on,
that
go on.
that there is a sort of issue or this sort of like mind virus in a way that kind of infects all of us, even me, every day, where you can't help but um kind of filter out all of the big issues in your life. And I mean the big issues in the sense that the ones that are so intangible, so unreachable, so unfathomable that or unfathomable, whatever it is, that it just doesn't cross your mind. Like for example, like things like sitting in a traffic jam. You just kind of think to yourself, "This is the way it is." I'm stuck in this traffic jam. Not many people think to themselves, "Why am I sitting in this traffic jam?" You know, what is it about the road system that's made it so congested, and how do we solve that problem? Like these huge problems in the world that could probably be solved if you really just broke it down and addressed one tiny issue at a time. We kind of just don't think about because they're just so complex and so big. I think you guys would probably agree with me, the doctors, right? With regard to healthcare, healthcare could probably be optimized in a lot of different ways. In a lot of countries, healthcare, you could argue, is broken. But healthcare as a system is so complex, is so unbelievably large that a lot of times we think to ourselves, we can't be the person that makes the difference and makes the change to solve the problem. And I think that that's something that people who really end up building cool shit, like say what you want about Elon Musk, but that guy has built some cool shit, right? That's the difference between people like regular people, and then people like them, like Elon, like Steve Jobs, like all the somewhat visionaries in the world, the people that we think are visionaries today. I feel like that's the difference. Is they just kind of think to themselves, here's a problem, let's try and solve it.
But like, let's say the examples you brought up specifically, the traffic and like healthcare specifically, right? There are like these are like the complexity of these issues requires a lot of dedication, right? That we can agree on.
Yeah.
And for that reason, there are dedicated teams that are sort of supposed to be looking after these things, right? And for better or worse, that's the situation. Like you would have to go through a lot of checks and balances and a lot of official due process to be able to do anything about it. And in that way, yes, it's possible for me to make a difference. But if you think about, let me use healthcare specifically as a trajectory for me. From where I am now, I would have to finish my degree. I'd have to specialize in public health, probably, I think. And then I'd have to go climb up the ranks and then dedicate my life towards this certain issue. But there is a lot of steps to getting there. And I think as much as it is, one side of it is that like you can look at it and be like, this is an issue. If I really sit down and if I really try and solve this issue, I can probably solve this issue. Another thing is like, is it worth dedicating my entire life to solving this issue? Is it that much of a problem to me? And is it worth whatever else I'll be giving up? So, like, for example, if you're into policy making in healthcare, I'd be giving up the practicing side of it. Maybe, like, for me specifically, or for anyone else specifically, maybe they don't want to give that up. You know what I mean? So, I feel like the people that go on to solve these issues, it becomes a very self-selecting group of people who have that interest and have the vision and are able to sort of sacrifice a lot of things that other people aren't able to. And I think that does agree with your point to some extent, because I think people like Steve Jobs, people like Elon Musk, they have made a lot of sacrifices in their lives. But that's why I mean it becomes a very self-selecting group, because these are the type of sacrifices that I guess the average Joe isn't willing to make or doesn't see feasible to make.
I mean, I think my point is more just that if we all really thought about what we could do to solve every problem in the world, or at least the problems that come up in our lives, if we sat down, we took the time and really mapped out, take maybe like a few hours and sit down and realistically break down all the problems that contribute to this big issue of healthcare, of the healthcare system is broken. Maybe, you sat down and then you mapped out the entire thing, and you came to the conclusion that this is not something that I want to spend my life on. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that everyone needs to go ahead and solve a big issue or change the world. That's obviously not the case. What I'm saying is that I think that a lot of us, me included, end up just foregoing the process of thinking about solving big problems because they are so big, because they are so complex, and because they are so, unfathomable, that we just let it kind of flow over our heads. And I think that's where the issue arises, right? Is if you had a world where everyone really considered every problem, or at least had the time to consider the problems that they felt were really big problems to them and to the people around them, then I think you would have a lot more people trying to address those problems. And I'm talking about these big, big existential problems, I think that's my point. It's not that everyone needs to go and solve an issue. It's not that everyone should give up what they're doing to go and build something cool. But I think more people should consider the fact that it's possible to solve things. That's just my point.
That's fair.
Yeah, very simply put.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more closer to on Harun's side here, where I feel like it does take a lot of sacrifices, and if you go down the path that's less taken, you have to realize that you are taking a huge risk, and you're not really. I mean, like for example, if I take the healthcare as an example, because same as Harun, I think if you were to really break down every single problem that's in the healthcare society, let's just take a Singapore context. If we take other countries, it's going to be a lot more complex. Just in Singapore, purely, if someone was to purely look at it, right, it's going to really, really take like a lot longer than maybe even one person's career to even try and start to patch up the holes. Like actually recently, like I just found out about this, but there's a study. It's not really a study, it's more like the medical society of in Singapore, like the medical school society. They're actually trying to get down to like the root of why junior doctors are getting paid so little. Why is our school fee so expensive? Where are these things going? And I think it's been like more than a year or 2 years, right? They've really gotten nowhere apparently. Like as in that's just like an example that I can think of when Harun was talking about the healthcare issue particularly is it's just after a while, I mean if you have the drive to do it then of course you can do it, but after a while it just gets very, very tedious and you just I mean everyone's self centered at the end of the day, right? You just want to do the thing that's gonna help you the most. And if you go down the route that's more clear, more taken, more more tried by other people and you know that you're going to benefit from it, why would you not do it? Yeah. It's a very privileged thing for me to say if I was going to say, oh, I'm gonna change this, I'm going to change that. If I have the privilege of like, my basic needs are settled, like everything is taken care of, then yeah, that's the privileged point of view. But if I was to just speak from a non-privileged point of view, I would think it's just safer to not try to do something. Okay,
I
I
don't know.
wouldn't say outlandish, but yeah, go on.
I think there is this idea that, it's a very privileged position to be in, to be able to even think about these problems in the first place. You need to have all your basic needs met. You need to be able to be living, a great life before you can even consider these high level problems. But I think at the end of the day, when you want to make something great, you want to build something that you really think will change things, that involves a ton of risk, and that involves a ton of investment as well. Whether it's building a company, whether it's building a non-profit, whatever it could be, right? I think a lot of the people who build the greatest companies, they dedicate their entire lives, but they also dedicate a lot of their finances to it. They put themselves in positions where, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're not sure where, the next when the next break is going to come, right? You can hear stories about like the Airbnb guys. They were so deep in credit card debt that they used to buy, those binders that you keep baseball cards in, like the trading cards. They used to buy those binders and fill them up with their credit cards because they were so deep in debt, right? So like I think it's not so much you need to be at a certain position before you can start considering these problems. I think it's more you just need to care enough and you need to want to be able to solve the problem, and then you'll just do what it takes to get it done. And if you fail, you fail, but at least you tried. Like, and that's also another issue that I find with Singapore is that because we're in such a conservative environment that's been pushed by the government, conservative in our values, conservative in our fiscal policy, conservative in our culture, we end up in a situation where we have a very conservative society that's averse to risk. And I think that's a lot of the reason why, despite the fact, and we're talking about like startups here, right? Despite the fact that the education level in Singapore is so high, the infrastructure is so good, the unemployment rates are low, things are really great compared to like a city like San Francisco. Silicon Valley is still kicking our ass when it comes to where are the big companies coming out from, And I mean, I think that's something that really should change. The government is putting in some effort. There are grants, there are subsidies that go towards like enterprise and building startups. But I think the cultural mindset really needs to switch in order for this country to become a place that really propagates these big companies that change the world. If that doesn't happen, if people aren't willing to take the risk, then privileged or not privileged, it's not going to happen.
I think you're right. I actually wanted to bring that up as well, that Singapore specifically, we have a culture where safety is the number one option. We've talked about it before, I think, on like our education episode and stuff like that, about how we will always tend towards doing what's safer just because that's how we are brought up. And there's a very clear line that if you follow, you will be fairly successful and that you'll lead like a decent life. And that's where taking risks in Singapore become a bit more unnecessary, because you can sort of see a life that you are comfortable without having to take these risks, as opposed to in a place like Silicon Valley where the culture is literally to have a startup, to live paycheck to paycheck, to start this thing out of your garage or something, with no money, just an idea and a bit of skills in a certain area. And that's something we don't have. And I think me personally, I don't have that drive either. And I don't think I will ever have that drive, just because I sort of feel like I am the kind of person where I'm in this system now and I don't see myself coming up with any ideas that could be interesting enough. And I don't see myself investing myself into any problems that are big enough, because I know that if I continue the path I'm going down now, thankfully, obviously, I'm privileged to be able to say this, but I think I'll be all right and I think I'll be safe. And whether that's a good thing or not, it's up for discussion. But yeah, that's where I stand on the matter.
Bate, you want to throw anything out?
I think it's very cultural, like you said. So like we all grown up in that like conservative culture, and it comes down to risk taking. And like Singaporeans, just for a matter of fact, don't like putting themselves in situations where they're not comfortable. So it's just the way it is. And also the thing is like we deal with it as a part of our lives. But the thing is also, I think one thing that happens is when you have these people who reach great success and do well for themselves, they encourage you to take these risks and live paycheck to paycheck and have a life that isn't going to be comfortable for a while, but you get into your own, and once you've built a successful thing for yourself, then you really reap the rewards of it. We see all the success stories, but I don't know, for like every like one successful, like for every like Steve Jobs, how many like 10,000s of like failed like people who are just bankrupt, broke, nothing to their name, who tried and failed. So I think like people don't know the risk that's involved, and I think that scares people off a bit. And like that's what scares me. I don't know if I can speak for the three of you or like Harun and Baraf if they agree more with this, but I think that's something that I find daunting, and I think like most people in that situation would find quite daunting.
So I see it from both sides, because like on the one hand, I'm similar to Harun and Barav in the sense that I have this path that's laid out for me. If I just finish law school, if I just, do my training contract and get a job in a firm, I'll make good money, right? Decent money, enough to live on, enough to be comfortable. But the part that kind of I struggle with is like at the end of the day, when when I'm on my deathbed, right? What am I going to regret? Am I going to regret not giving it a shot and not like trying to build something? And I think I will. But that involves, but trying to build something then in turn involves the sacrifice of all of the safety.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difficulty that Bhatia, I'm sure you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I see it on both sides. But to me, I think, or at least in my mind, I am more geared towards just giving it a shot, because I know that if I don't, I'll just regret it, you know? And at this point in my life, it's just about like, I think taking that leap of faith and just trusting that, I have good judgment and that I can do this. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least I gave it a shot. That's kind of the way I see it. And not everyone has that mindset. That's fine. But I think more people should consider that route. Because if we had, because I think people underestimate the amount of success that you can have and your likelihood of being successful in creating something that actually affects the world, and then they overestimate the amount of detriment to their life that this wrong, like a failed decision might make. To me, I just think about it like, okay, at the end of the day, if I try this thing for 5 years and it doesn't work, I'll just go back to practice. I'll just go back to a law firm. I'll make, just less money than my peers, but I'll still have a decent life. If that doesn't work out, I'll find a job somewhere else. A law degree is relatively transferable. If that doesn't work out, I'll sign on. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right?
I guess
That's pretty bad, to be fair. I think that's as bad as it gets.
in that way, yeah, it's true what Barav says. Like in one way about the privilege of like in your situation having that safety net and having like multiple layers of safety nets as well. So maybe it would not apply to as many people, where they'd have that privilege of having that safety net, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, you're right that we are in privileged positions, but other than that, I don't think that it's a reason to not consider it.
I
You
think
know?
I think it also like tying back into like also kind of what we were speaking about, like in terms of a broader sense, it's like your philosophies in life, and like it's based on this conversation purely. It strikes me as like quite like an optimist versus pessimist like viewpoint as well, because like Armand, obviously you're coming from like quite an optimistic perspective where like you're like, I mean, it could go so well. And if it does go wrong, there's like things in place that like kind of limit the failure in a sense. And then like I suppose the other three of us are coming at it from like more of a pessimistic viewpoint as well, which I think is also quite Singaporean in nature. The reason that people are scared of taking risks is because like generally as a culture, as a society, we're quite pessimistic about most things.
But you don't think that just feels like this whole thing you call pessimism? Isn't that just being afraid to fail? Like, do you think that that's it?
Yeah.
Do you think that you
as
guys are
in,
just
to some extent,
I
yeah,
think
of
that's a
course.
big part of it, lah.
But it's
Yeah.
very easy to break it down into a small thing and say you're afraid to fail at doing this, when that that fear to fail comes from, like, it roots from something that is very big, in the sense that I'm giving up safety. And in my life, I mean, it depends on what drives your life, right? So for example, you said that in the future, on your deathbed, for example, you might regret not doing this certain thing, right? But let's say, I'm not saying personally, but for someone else, they might put more priority towards like their family, their friendships, things like that. And then maybe a job becomes more of something that's like, they want something secure and safe so that they can have a steady income stream that allows them to support these other facets in their life. And I guess for someone that has to take risks, as much as you're risking your like money, you're also risking friendships and family, because you take up a lot of your time that you may not be able to spend. Like, it's very difficult to do this if you had a family, like a nuclear family, in the sense you had like a wife and kids. That would also be like not feasible. And you don't know how much of this would end up engulfing you. And I think the fear of that kind of life is also something that draws me back.
I don't know. I don't agree with that, because I can tell you for a fact that if I go and become a lawyer, I'm not seeing my wife and kids for like most of the day, right? Like, that's the work that I'm going to be doing anyways. I'm going to be working from 9 a.m. and I'm going to come back from work at like 11 p.m. That's on deal day. That's it. And it's the same thing for you for the med school guys, I assume. Like, the amount of work that you guys will be doing, the hours that you'll be working.
But that depends on what
But there is
route, I think.
there is also the knowledge and the guarantee that I know this is going to guarantee me X amount of whatever resources, whatever. But let's say you put the same thing into something that you're unsure about, and this is definitely like, I agree with whatever you all said before. Like, I am definitely, I don't like to use the word brainwash, but low key brainwashed by like Singaporean very very like pragmatic culture lah. So I mean that's why I'm saying this. Like, if I work from 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., I would. The only reason why I'll do it is with the knowledge that what 15 hours, 14 hours that I spend is actually bearing something, like bearing fruit. Yeah, that's yeah, that's what I think lah.
It's just a
And
security, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they're all valid points.
Yeah. It's just
I
a
can't.
fundamental, like,
Yeah,
pros versus cons.
yeah. I mean, we're coming from different areas here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just a bit
but
more.
because Aman was saying you think that more people should be having the risk taking approach, right? That's what you're saying. Like, especially in Singapore. I mean, that's what you said just now, right? You were saying that.
Yeah, I would. I would like it if more people were.
Mm.
Well, at least I'm not saying that they need to take the risk. I'm just saying that I feel like we've gone too far the other way. I'm not saying you need to be all in, risk on, and drop everything, build a company, build this, do that. I'm not saying any of that. Everyone has their own appetite for risk, and that's a sliding scale. But I think that we have gone too far the other way. Like, we overestimate the likelihoods of failure and underestimate the likelihoods of success. We inflate that the scariness of the unknown, and in a sense we're all very very passive. We let life come through us and then just take us where it wants us to go. And in the end of the day, when I think about that kind of life, I don't know if that's something that I'd be happy living, you know. If there was a situation that I could, really take charge of my own career, my own life, my own hours, my everything, then I would rather just risk it for that. I think that's a worthwhile risk to take. Not everyone does, but I do think that that's a worthwhile risk to take. And for me, that looks like starting a company. For other people, that might look like changing from this profession to that profession. It might look like quitting your company to join another company. A lot of people make these different steps every day that, in the course of their career are strategic moves. But I think a lot of people also don't make those strategic moves or don't make those decisions because they're afraid of, the failure. I'm not saying that means that you just make rash and uncalculated moves at all, but I'm saying that the your estimation needs to be accurate, or at least more accurate. I don't know if mine necessarily is more accurate, but I assume my suspicion is that we are too risk averse for our own benefit. That's the way I see things.
But wouldn't you also say that as like a metric for risk, like someone in any one of our positions, let's say like for you, if you're from a stable financial background, you've got a degree that has a very like normally quite a linear path where you know what you could end up doing afterwards, and like you said, you have fallbacks. You've got like stable financially, you've got a fallback in place. So if you were to try and start a company, there's a lot less risk involved in you doing that, because if that were to go bust, you haven't risked too much versus someone in like a situation who's like not as like financially stable as we are, thankfully, or like in a situation where like the degree doesn't have like such a direct output. Let's say someone doing like a different degree where if you try something for a couple of years, you fail at that, you don't really know where to go next. You have to try something else from scratch. And then that's where like the element of risk comes in.
I mean, I don't like this idea of, we are in privileged positions, so we can't speak about other people. Like,
oh no, I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying that it's the risk we speak of is much lower than a general risk. Or like the risk we are saying that someone should take is a lot less than like what our risk, if we were to take that risk in that given situation, is a lot less than like the generic risk someone else might be taking, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that we shouldn't speak on it.
I mean, I think that I have as much to lose as anyone else. I don't think that because I'm in a position where my family is like reasonable, like comfortable, that makes me any more like blasé about being able to approach risk. I still measure it up as, my parents' money is their money. That's not my money. I make decisions for my own career to build myself, to
No,
build
not
my
just that,
own.
like your law degree as well, and like all of that, if you were to factor in.
I
Because it's
would
not
think
about
it's
your,
more
I'm
refined
going more
because
on like, yeah.
I don't think I don't think of your risk being any lower than any my risk or Barav's risk or Bhattya's risk in terms of like money wise, because
Yeah.
none of us are going to be relying on our parents
Yeah, exactly.
when it comes to careers. We're more talking about and this is a good thing from you, the fact that you're able to pursue what you want to do at the same time pursue this law degree that you're doing. So you've built up safety nets for yourself that are in place, which is credit to you, of course, but it's also sometimes more than other people would be able to have.
I mean, this goes back to my earlier point. Sometimes I think that the law degree and the whole having a safety net is like a lot more detrimental in some ways than it is. It's a lot more detrimental to the idea that to being able to take risk, than it is to if I didn't have these safety nets. Like if I was taking like a business degree, for example, and I didn't have this path laid out for me, right? 100%, I would start a company right now. You know, but because you have this sort of like enticing, low hanging fruit that you can just revert to at every instance, that makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to take the leap of faith and jump into the unknown. So a lot of people, I would assume, who are not in the position where they have a path laid out for them, I think they have an equal amount of or they have just as much reason to take risk as, or even more so reason to take risk as anyone else. Like, being in my position, I would think that people like us, we have more reason not to take risk than people who aren't in our position, who don't have a path laid out.
I guess that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, that's the way I
that's
see it.
fair.
There's definitely two trains
I
of
mean, it
thought.
also depends on how much you really
Principles.
want to do what the other thing that you're going to do, right? How much you really want to embark on something that's not your primary, not say primary, but like your law degree or your med degree or whatever.
Yeah, and in that way, Arman is right, because not having that so-called safety net, or not having that medical degree or law degree or whatever it is, does mean that you would want to do the other thing more, just by default. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt you have to be interested in what you want to pursue. Like,
Yeah.
that's clear, lah.
But I'm saying, like, let's say your law degree or your whatever degree you're doing is not because of something you wanted to do. It's just like, I mean, at the end of the day, you chose your degree, what, 18, 19 years old, when you
Yeah.
weren't, I mean, wasn't really sure I want to become a doctor. You weren't really sure you want to become a lawyer. It was just like I wouldn't say spur of a moment, but it was like it was quite a, not say
Uninformed
fully,
decision.
properly, yeah. Not say fully and properly thought out thing lah. So then if you have something else which you want to embark on, then that degree you are doing is like, I don't know, it really just depends on how much you really want to embark on this lah. Let's say if you don't want to become a lawyer now all the way, then obviously you wouldn't choose to get a law degree as a low hanging fruit, right? Yeah. And it's
Yeah, I
quite
agree.
interesting because actually when you were saying this, I thought of this. I think we had this conversation about, it wasn't on a podcast, we were just talking about like Singapore sports, okay, without trying to digress too much. Then me and Harun and I think like Moj was there, a few other, I don't know.
Yeah, I
was
remember
there
this.
as
I
well,
remember
yeah.
this.
They were talking about like how like government is not putting enough resources into sports, and then it also goes back to how like Singaporeans don't want to actually like participate in sports. And then me and Harun were saying that it doesn't matter if Singaporeans don't want to participate. The government should still be trying to put in these resources into sports, especially after we have like, I mean, I would say we are quite holistic in our society apart from that one major aspect, right? So that should be where we are putting our resources towards now. And then you were taking the stand as like, oh, but we've come so far as a society and progressed for 60 plus years or what, because we are so pragmatic, because us as Singaporeans and what they have drew into us is to just be pragmatic and don't do anything that's like very outrageous. And so now it's like, it's a bit different lah. I mean, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if that was before you were doing your app.
Did I s-
Maybe
did
you were
I say
doing
that?
your,
That is true, yeah.
Is that what I was
That
saying?
was the stance that you had taken.
yeah,
I don't know if
you
it
like
was
maybe
just to-
because
I
because you
can't-
weren't doing your app then it's like, maybe it's you starting your
I
own
think
startup,
that was
change your views on it.
I think that was more me playing devil's advocate, if
You
anything.
think so?
I don't know if that was really my position at that point in time. I can't really remember. But
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought of it suddenly.
yeah.
Which
Yeah,
it was a
it's
fair
actually
point at
very
that point in
interesting to
time.
bring up.
Yeah. We can revert to the discussion if you all want, because actually I have
Maybe another time.
yeah, maybe another time.
There's quite a
But,
bit to talk about.
yeah, that was an interesting discussion that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, to bring it back to maybe the start of like how this discussion came about, think a bit more about our sort of philosophies of life and how we approach life and stuff. Me personally, I think the past few years have been very, like, it's moved very fast for me, but at the same time I feel like things have been changing constantly. Like my circles are becoming smaller and smaller. Things are becoming more and more apparent, and a lot of things of like what's going to be there for the next 10, 15, 20 years are starting to reveal themselves. So in that way, at the moment, if you were to ask me, I would say, not in a sad way or anything, I don't have any so-called purpose in life at this point in time. So it's very hard for myself to, let's say, throw myself into my career, throw myself into something else, that kind of thing. And because life is changing so quickly, I'm sort of in a position where I'm just kind of waiting for something to come across, sort of grab me in that direction. If we're talking about quotes and stuff that have driven me, I mean, across my life, a lot of it has been from sports, right? A lot of and it's been a lot more like what you said, like doing versus talking. a lot of the inspiration I got was from people doing things rather than people saying things. Obviously, quotes stick, but if you think about the careers of people like Cristiano Ronaldo, the amount of hard work that they put in to get to that place, that's sort of the kind of people I was looking up to get to where I got to at this point in time. Yeah, but given that right now I don't see any very clear goal or very clear purpose in my life, I don't feel very moved in any way by anything or that has come to me, specifically in purpose.
But you don't feel like being a doctor, being in med school kind of gives you the purpose already, like it's preset purpose.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So obviously that was sort of what I was going to throw myself into, and that's what I envisioned my purpose in life to be. But then, for better or for worse, a lot of the things that I have experienced throughout my medical school journey so far has not been exactly what I'd prepared myself for or what I'd expected to see or find. And I guess the career paths that lay before me are slowly narrowing themselves in the sense of what I can and cannot do. Um, and I guess that drive to be able to pursue something that maybe is a bit more out of my reach, I have lost that kind of drive. So, and I guess it comes from just being in that medical learning environment where everyone is doing the same thing. When it came to like before I entered med school, then I'm in like junior college and secondary school and everything, and everyone's got different purposes, everyone's got different things in their mind. But then once you come into medical school, you're surrounded by people who have similar purposes to you, similar like trajectories as you, and you can sort of see where you stand among these people. You can sort of see the kind of person that wants to do a certain thing or what you have to be doing to reach that certain point. And then slowly, like for me, like I would have thought as I cycled through the different rotations, I would be able to narrow down what I wanted to do. But the more I go through every single rotation, it just sort of makes me a bit more confused in a way. And I guess what I'm trying to say in to encapsulate this entire thing is that medicine as a career does not seem very purposeful for me personally. Obviously, there's an immense purpose in it, in that you have some direct value to society in the sense that you're helping people, and a lot of these people you help, you see the direct impact that you have on them. But for me personally, I don't know if that's the purpose that I can use to drive my life at the moment. Because when I did have that as my purpose, I didn't feel very motivated or driven, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, you said that you were kind of waiting for something to come along
Yeah.
that might give you this new sense of purpose or
Yeah.
might pull you in a different direction. When you say that, do you mean you're waiting for some sort of like something to come across your desk that says this is what I need to do? Or are you saying that you're looking for some sort of idea or different life trajectory that you want to pursue?
I think I see it more as an intangible thing. Because for me, purpose would come from, rather than from your career, would come from, something else, something some people might be able to explain, some people might not be able to, whether it be the people around you, your family, your friends, whether that's the reason that you want to push on, wake up every single day to see them, to work for them, right? That's one purpose I can think of. But I feel like because digressing a little bit here, but because I've grown up in very like religious environment, um, you sort of for a lot of your earlier days, you see your purpose of life being religion, and you see that end goal in life, and that's where you want to take yourself, and then the religion is built around certain morals and values, and that's what pushes you in that direction. But I guess when you grow up, you sort of feel a need to have something else to be pushing you across rather than like the guarantees of what you'll have after death, and that for me is the struggle that I'm having now. Or maybe just no, I don't want to say struggle, maybe just like the journey that I'm having now is sort of just trying to find a purpose that it doesn't have to be tangible. I just have to kind of feel it. And yeah, that's why I said it's a bit of a digression, because it's less suited to like what career I want to take, what path I want to take. It's just kind of wanting to find something that's going to drive me day to day.
But do you think that there's just this aspect of at some point we can't keep just leaving our options open and we just need to decide on something that we want to dedicate ourselves to? and just have the discipline, not the motivation, but just the discipline to get to work every day and just do it.
Yeah, I'll have that. So I mean, more or less, I have decided that I will be a doctor. Right, that's the pathway that I have, and because I have that set out for me, I know what I have to do and what I'm going to do. So that part I don't think is a challenge for me. When it comes to purpose, it's more of just like it's a bit intangible. It's a bit hard to explain, but just something outside of like work that would sort of drive you day to day. And like I said, life changes constantly. So, today I may not have anything, but tomorrow I might have something. In a few years, I might have a family. A few years, many years, I might have a family. And that might be the thing that pushes me forward. So, I don't feel like I'm in a rush to find anything. And I do have a clear like mindset when it comes to career wise. I mean, maybe not clear in the sense of that I know where I want to specialize and all that, but I do know that I am going to follow that medical route for myself. Yeah.
Barry, Bhatia, any thoughts?
Marv, you want to go first?
Hmm,
Got me
honestly,
choked up.
honestly, like listening to Harun, I feel like a lot of the things he said is quite similar to what I feel like. Except the main difference for me is that it wasn't something that like pre medical school or like in junior college or secondary school. It wasn't something that I had envisioned lah. Like because I'm not honestly this whole thing about like having this purpose in life. I'm not really. I don't. I don't think I really believe in that lah. Like everyone has that one purpose in life that they are sort of set for, that's ever changing or what. Like personally, I just think it's more about what you really want to do, what you enjoy doing, what you feel like, what you feel, what you feel the most happy doing, lor. And I don't think it's about like, I don't think purpose in life is the right word that I would use. It's more like just what you feel like you want to do rather than what you feel like you're meant to do. Yeah, and yeah, that's the only thing that I would say differentiates me from Harun. Like in the sense, before medical school, I didn't really want to do it, and right now, I think Aman mentioned something about like how um after a while you just have to choose something, and instead of being motivated to do it, you just have to be disciplined to do it. I feel like that's already sort of my life now in a sense. And honestly, I
Yeah,
feel like that's
absolutely.
that's been our whole lives. Like no one wants to wake up at 7 a.m. and go to school every day, 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Sorry, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. until 6 p.m. whatever. I mean that it's just discipline. You just have to do it, and at some point you realize, okay, um, we're all doing this for a good thing lah. Like we are gonna eventually have a career out of this, and we need this like it's not something we're just doing for the sake of it, right? So yeah, I feel like discipline comes into it lah. Like it's been there my whole life like it's not. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
That's fair. I agree more with Harun, less with Bara, in the sense that like it'd be. I don't think I have a like sort of like a meaning or like a purpose to my life right now, but it'd be nice to have one at some point. I feel like, and also I feel like it kind of like breaks up the monotony because like I think Harun, you mentioned like Ronaldo and like athletes and stuff like that, right? And like I guess you can put it down to a discipline where like certain things you wake up in the morning, you don't really want to do it, but you do it anyway. I know that that's what some people subscribe to, but in the sense that like I think I've been watching a lot of like Virat Kohli videos recently, and like my guy's doing well. So like he has this thing where he keeps saying that if he wakes up in the morning and he's not 100% like focused and dedicated and doesn't want to like go out on the field, and like he says if he ever has a day like that, he's not going to play again. Like he's going to stop, and that's why he'll like call it a day. And he's taken a break in the past, and like he's had like a couple months off where he's just not been injured, not been anything. He just wasn't feeling it 100% and just didn't and chose not to do it. And I have a lot of respect for that as well because obviously like there's someone again like similar to like Ronaldo, like has gone to the top of the game based on hard work, wasn't like meant to be as good as he became, all that kind of stuff. But like if they can recognize the fact that you have to want to do it, and also the thing is like personally that kind of resonates with me more because if I wake up in the morning and I don't really want to do what I'm doing, then what's the point? I get that sometimes there's external factors that you have to do it because like your parents have invested time and money in you. But also like the thing is like if you don't want to like do what you're doing with your life, then why bother like sticking around, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I guess we've come to the conclusion that we all have no purpose in life, and
Yeah.
we therefore, starting today, our purpose in life will be this podcast.
It should be, sir. We've
Just
put in so
might
much
as
effort
well,
at
right?
this point.
Might
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah, bro. At least
Like,
we are putting on this
once-
podcast, bro. What are other people doing, man?
Yeah.
We don't have any podcast.
At
Bro,
least we have a podcast.
bro, we're not
The
even
land
putting
of
it
the
out. We're
blind, the
putting
man
it
with
out
one
twice
eye
a
king
week.
meme.
Yeah,
putting
twice a
this
week
on-
is big, right?
Twice a week is huge.
Yeah.
Firstly, no one else has a fucking podcast. Secondly, none of the other podcasts even upload twice a week. Like,
Yeah, bro.
We'll
It
get
doesn't
there.
matter how bad people think this podcast is, bro.
yeah,
The
exactly.
land of the
think it's bad?
blind, the man with
Think
one eye
it's still
king.
You know,
Bro,
apparently,
it's not about quality, it's about discipline. We get on this fucking call every week.
we just get through this fucking 2 hours every week. God damn. No, apparently having a podcast for girls, like I've heard this from my friends who are female. Apparently, a
Red flag.
guy, yes, red flag.
Red
Guy who has
flag, right?
podcast
Yeah,
is a
huge red flag, apparently.
Huge red flag.
The thing is,
it
like,
might
if
be-
they listen,
I mean,
if they
it's definitely
listen to
a-
this podcast, if they listen to this podcast, then they wouldn't have any like qualms with it because they know that this is top quality.
Yeah. No, I think what they're referring to is that whole like fucking Andrew Tate kind of.
Yeah,
Red
because I
pill.
think that's where a lot of like teenage podcasts go.
Yeah,
That's the direction they go.
I mean, I can see why it's entertaining and why it gets views, but that's just the whole. That's what everything is now.
What?
You know, like you go on YouTube and you just see a bunch of freaking OnlyFans girls and these two dudes talking about masculinity and how the
Dude,
man has
it's
lost his
always the
place. in
same
the-
shit. They always get these like dumb OnlyFans chicks
Yeah.
to represent all women.
Yeah,
They use them to represent all
and then
women.
they destroy them.
Yeah, and then what the fuck you doing? And then they'll be like, name like 5 countries or something. And then they say like race and shit. And then you're like,
If you
dude,
read, name 10 books.
yeah, then what's the point? Like, why? Like, bring on some actual like normal girls. Don't bring on people. Like, I'm sure you could find OnlyFans girls that are actually intelligent as well. Bring them on. They purposefully find the dumbasses and they bring them on.
Do you think if
Next
people
week we've
listen
got
to our
3
podcast,
OnlyFans
they-
girls on our podcast, and we're gonna destroy them. We're gonna just
Wait, don't say it like that.
Oh,
Do you think if like we had like people listen to our podcast, this podcast like properly, that this podcast would be a red flag?
I don't think so.
I think based on
I don't
quality,
think so.
maybe, but
We still have girlfriends.
Yeah.
they know about it.
Yeah.
And
We
then-
got them before them.
Yeah, I
that
didn't
is-
listen.
no,
I
I
didn't
didn't.
listen to a single
didn't
episode.
either.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
I didn't listen to
I
a
know,
single
they-
episode.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think so.
yeah. She's told me she's tried.
Yeah, Bet does. Bet does.
What?
She said our last episode was really funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the last one? The
16,
17?
episode 16.
16?
Yeah, she said it was really
What was 16 again?
dude.
What did we talk
Was
about
it?
in 16?
Political apathy. Is that it?
Yes,
Ah,
political
I
apathy.
think so.
Yes,
Shout out to
political
that.
apathy. Yeah, go on, Bet.
Yeah.
She's probably
Thank
just
you,
saying that.
No, she didn't have to. I didn't tell her like
Oh, she didn't
I
go
didn't
off.
tell her to listen to the podcast or anything.
That's nice of
She
her.
went and listened to
That's
it.
sweet.
She said it was
That's sweet.
It was funny.
That's
I'm
nice.
sure she didn't get through the whole thing. It's a long
You know, I actually have our retention rates.
was it? How's
Yeah,
it? How's
yeah,
it
yeah.
going?
Oh, bro,
I mean, depends.
now I'm on it, right? The retention rates are so shit.
It's
Bro, we
not
got
that
zero-
bad.
We got 0% for most of the podcast.
Which one? It depends which one you're listening to.
Fair.
16?
I don't know. Like most of the podcasts, or most of the podcasts will be 0. Then some will be 25. And like the first minute will be
I'm
75.
seeing like the first 5 minutes is like 70, 80, and then it drops off to like 30.
Which one are you
And
on?
then I can't remember which one. I think it was 16.
Anyway, I think like it's pretty meta to be talking about how we're not doing that well on the podcast, right? Because one day we
Yeah.
can look back on it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Bro, when
Yeah.
all of us have dropped out of our degrees to like pursue this podcast full time, right? We'll be
No,
looking
and
at
that's
this.
honestly,
That's
honestly,
risk
it's
we
a
take,
viable
bro.
option. At this point, it's a viable option because it's not like my life is going anywhere else.
Bro, I think this is the risk we need to take. I think this is the risk we've been talking about.
I'm happy to take this risk, mate.
Bro, we all just
But he's
drop
got the
out
safety
today.
net of the app.
And then I have the safety net of law
Oh,
below
law
that.
degree. Yeah,
I got safety net after safety net, dude.
No, I want
Bro,
you
but
you
I
got
still
double
put-
safety net.
I still put in the work.
Yeah, you do put in the
I
work.
still put in
that
the
is
work.
true. You put in the
All
work.
right.
Yeah, it's fair. You put in the work.
Yeah. As long as I can put in the work, don't kick me off the plot. All right.
Yeah, you do. You put in more than most.
So I mean, Yeah, I think honestly speaking, I really think we have something going here. If we just keep putting out 2 episodes a week,
Bro,
right? At least if we
if
have four
people
guys.
listen to this podcast, right, they will realize that 90% of this podcast is us talking about how we think we have something good going.
No, but don't you think like at this point, like we're gonna start using up a lot of our really good topics and really good chat when we have no listeners, and maybe by the time we actually get listeners, we start like
Yeah, but
we,
if we
we
don't,
regret not
But
being able.
when we get listeners, we get guests in. We get like guests in. We get like
Yeah,
Andrew
true.
Tate on
there's
it.
there's stuff to talk about.
It'll evolve.
I don't think the well will run dry.
Yeah, I guess
You
so.
know,
I guess
we
so.
just need to keep thinking about it.
Yeah,
know,
it's true. It's
and
true.
and
Do you
and
think,
yeah, the
do you
listeners,
think if the
the
podcast
listeners will
becomes more and
suggest
more
what they want.
frequent,
You know,
Yeah,
so
once we have listeners, it'll be good.
then we just offload it to them.
Yeah,
What do you guys want to see?
outsourcing
Yeah,
for free as well.
Exactly.
But some of the things we talk
And
about.
then we
is
make them pay to
pretty
get on our Patreon and tell us topics to talk about. It's
no,
like-
but do you think if we start recording too much, then we'll run out of things to talk about when we see each other?
that is an actual possible problem.
No, because we only see each other to watch football nowadays.
That is true to some extent. That is true to some extent.
It's pretty much
Bro,
the case. We see each
bro,
other on
it's,
Sundays.
it's better than me. I see you guys just to record this podcast.
And I think I enjoy the podcast more than hanging out because it's all of us. You know what I mean?
fair.
Yeah, because when
Yeah.
we hang out, Batia's not there.
Yeah, because when we hang out,
Sometimes
it's
Bharat's
normally
not
just
there.
me, you, and Sahil,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Fair.
But on the pod, it's always the five of us.
Yeah.
At least the four of us. You know, like so in some ways, I enjoy this a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, of course, you know,
Depends on the occasion. You know?
yeah, if there's a specific occasion.
I do enjoy myself some hangouts, you know. I can't
Yeah.
lie.
But I do think our hangouts sometimes extend very, very long.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes I think back on it and I'm like, damn, I just spent 9 hours with these guys.
Yeah. I do think that's like. But then I
It's
think
like who
about
came
the
up
fact
with the
that
idea to
there's
cut a
no-
mullet? I wonder.
That wasn't me.
Like,
Yeah,
why?
exactly.
That was a great one though.
It was a
one.
good idea. But to be fair, I do think about it. Think about how much time to spend like on a hangout. And
Yeah.
I think there's no one else I could spend that kind of time with.
Oh,
And there's
100%.
no one I'd enjoy spending that kind of time.
100%.
So
100%.
I'm
I
okay
agree.
with it.
I agree.
I'm okay with it.
I agree.
Anyway,
On that note,
Yep.
Thank you for listening. This was episode 20. We started off with
Alright.
some philosophy stuff, and then we ended off with some meta stuff.
yeah.
So we went
Yeah.
the full circle.
Right.
Again, you know, you can check us out on YouTube, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts,
Twitter.
Twitter and Instagram.
It's X now.
Yeah, sorry, it's X and Instagram.
Yeah. Threads. I might set up a threads.
The threads.
Yeah.
I'm not going that far, mate. But
if you like threads, find us on threads. It might be there.
who knows?
Might not.
Yeah.
That's the
Never know.
That's the injury. All right, boys. I'll see you all next week. Thank you for your time. Have a good one.
Ciao.